Algoma Steel, based in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, has laid off 1,000 workers today, in part due to the punitive tariffs that Donald Trump has imposed on Canadian steel. The CBC's Marina von Stackelberg has been following along. She joins us from Ottawa. Marina.
Yeah, so we heard Pierre Poilievre in his first English comments there in question period, questioning the Liberals on these layoffs at Algoma Steel. 1,000 layoff notices, as you mentioned there, Andrew. Algoma Steel saying it's necessary to protect the company's future in light of these extraordinary conditions and the Trump tariffs. Algoma recently got $400 million from the federal government, along with $100 million from the provincial Ontario government in loans to protect jobs in the face of these tariffs. So you heard the Conservatives pushing the Liberals on that there. The Bloc Québécois questioning the Liberals on their climate policy. We know that memorandum of understanding, that agreement that was signed between Ottawa and Alberta last week, lays the path for a bitumen pipeline from the Alberta oil sands to the BC coast. And so the Bloc was accusing the Liberals of failing on their climate targets, saying, why don't you have more people resign? That's, of course, a reference to Stephen Guilbeault, a former minister who stepped down last week, saying he very much opposed this agreement, saying that it was going to hurt Canada's climate policy. The Liberals responding there, Stephen McKinnon, the House leader, saying that he believes that this agreement will actually is progress for climate change, pointing to the fact that Alberta has made promises to bring in carbon capturing and other different measures. So the Bloc very much there pushing the Liberals on climate policy and using Guilbeault's stepping down as a reference. We know also that very shortly we will find out who will be replacing him, as he has stepped down as a minister here in Ottawa as well. So we'll be watching that as well.
Yeah, and they were also using Stephen Guilbeault's words on the very popular talk show Tout le monde en parle last night, where he's sitting, as we should mention, he's resigned from cabinet, but he's staying on as a Liberal MP, saying that the government is just not going to meet its emissions reducing targets with this new memorandum of understanding, right, Marina?
Yeah, and we've had, the opposition NDP as well pushing the Liberals on this, saying, especially some Liberal MPs in British Columbia, how are you going to square what your party is doing with what people voted for and the climate targets? And so this is definitely something that I expect we will continue to see the government be pushed on.
Marina, thank you. CBC's Marina von Stackelberg, live in Ottawa. For more on this, we're joined by economist Peter Warrian. He is a senior research fellow at the Munk School of Global Affairs and a former research director with the United Steelworkers. He was also the chief economist of the province of Ontario. Peter, I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
So how expected were these layoffs, though, given what we know about demand for Canadian steel and this transition to these new furnaces?
Well, the transition and the tariffs are sort of linked, in the sense that you've had the story before that Algoma is in the lead of moving away from these blast furnaces to electric furnaces for environmental reasons. That's a good thing. But inevitably, there'll be job losses, but you could adjust to those through retirements, retraining, such over time. They're now having to do that with a gun to their head because of the tariffs. And I don't have the company's books in front of me, but they've got declining revenues because of the tariffs. So now you're having to do what you might have had, a year or two to do, and you got a matter of months. I would say that there's going to be a second bounce also on the tariff front. In the new year, the European, it's a carbon tariff, the common border adjustment, i.e. if you have environmental standards that are poorer on steel than domestic producers, you'll have to pay a tariff. I think that's actually justified because you can't expect our companies and communities to take these costs and somebody else gets a free ride. There are other countries, China, but there's more than China, that have very poor environmental standards. So if we're going through, including the taxpayers' money, to do this transition, then we should get relief. So right now, I think things they've been talking about doing, they're going to have to do with a gun to their head.
Let me ask you,
but
Peter. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
But also, January 1, the rules are going to change, and that could be a second bounce on this.
And then, Peter, I wanted to just ask you what we just heard from the opposition leader, the Conservative leader, Pierre Poilievre, in the House of Commons. He said the industrial carbon tax will kill even more Canadian steel jobs. What's your thinking on that?
Well, I think that's a political statement that I'm not. I mean, the new system of getting these electric furnaces involved adjustments to carbon prices or prices embedded in steel products. So this is not new news that's part of it's not a political accusation. It's part of making that succeed. But that won't succeed unless other countries go to this carbon tax or a border adjustment method. That's different than just the general carbon tax debate.
Now, we also know that there was a $500 million loan that was given to, about federal and provincial, but mostly federal dollars, given to Algoma to try and, I guess, transition and to safeguard these jobs. So how can, what about that money in terms of trying to protect Canadian steelworker jobs?
Well, that was going into and has been going into doing this business of the furnaces, the technology, the electric furnaces coming in. It also, the government has also, because of the short-term cash crunch, because of the tariffs, loaned additional money. It's just that all of this is jammed into the same short-term box. That's why we're now in this position of having to deal with all of this with a gun to our head. I think the transition is right. Helping the communities and the steel companies do that adjustment is fine. But then we have the wild card of Mr. Trump. And then on the other side, we got the Europeans.
So, Peter, this sounds like a pretty bleak moment for Canadian steel workers. What's your thinking?
It's a very tough moment. You can't understand that. But when you look more broadly at what Mr. Carney is trying to do about infrastructure, defense, mining, and some of these things, those are very steel-intensive industries. So the midterm outlook for steel is reasonably good. But we live in the now, and it's getting there.
And so I see. All right. So you actually think that there are opportunities. Well, we just heard the defense minister, for instance, talking about this new opportunity to help rearm Europe, if you will. That could require Canadian steel, for instance.
Sure. Defense and infrastructure, for instance, use a lot of plate steel. That exactly is that's center ice for Algoma Steel.
Peter, it was good of you to take the time to talk to us. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Peter Warrian joining us from Toronto.